So, hi everyone, and welcome to our 24th meetup, right? Instead of an IDF New Delhi 24th meetup. So this session is on basically going through this design whole process, right? Like Aditi's last talk was regarding research and all things, right, Aditi?
Yes, it was about researching the market in tier 2 and tier 3 India and
Yes.
basically putting the next billion users
Yeah.
on the designer's radar. So
Yes.
it's all about designing for the next billion users the last time.
So this meetup was more towards creative automation, right? About allowing the technology to infuse the best practice in the work, right? So I like with the title itself, it's very pleasing for me, right? And I would like to know like what is inside this presentation, right? And how we can basically align our working style with technology, and want to learn more on that part, right? So Aditi is basically branding consultant specialist in media content, and her focus majorly lies in building product content interfaces for the next billion users. And she is currently working as a product marketing and researcher. And this webinar will be conducted into three phases. First, presentation. Third, second phase is basically open mic discussion where you can put in your question and Aditi will answer that, and then we'll close the session. For the disclaimer, we are recording this session and we will put it on on our YouTube channel, UXT Talks. So yeah, so this is what. And few of the house rule guys, please turn your camera on, right, and mic off during the presentation. If you have questions, you can basically post it in the chat section, and after the presentation, Aditi will take those questions, right, and answer your queries. And this is it. So let's start now. Over to Aditi. Aditi, yeah, you can take it from here.
Right. Hi everyone. So thank you for the elaborate introduction, Shilo. And as Alok said, this is not my first time speaking here. I think there are a lot of new faces that have joined in. So, hi, for the new people here, I'm Aditi. I basically will work with SaaS products and media content. I do a lot of branding and rebranding for startups. I work with a major media brand like the Indian Express. And today's topic will not deviate much from design and branding and how creative automation can actually help scale our efforts when we build campaigns, when we build marketing efforts, when we build creatives to promote these products. Of course, when it comes to SaaS and products, one side is the UI interface, and I think a lot of you will be working in those areas. I mean, can I have a like raise of hands on the chat for the people who are working with UI interfaces here? Like, if you could just do a plus one on the chat, I'll be glad so that I know who my audience is here today because that will also help me align my content with what I want to tell you on creative. Okay, Anupam, Alok, Tanish, Vardhan. All right, so we have four front end people over here, right? So, guys, not going to dissuade you. I think a lot of you will already be knowing quite a lot of what I'm going to be telling the rest of the people here. Because when you work with the SaaS industry, you kind of assimilate the quick build, like create, like learn, and then rebuild method into your methods of working. I expect every one of you must be having certain deadlines, certain procedures by which you go in the software development industry, or for that matter, in the front end development industry. But for people who are into graphics purely and people who are into designing communication and content and branding, especially, I find that they lack a lot of structure sometimes in order to fit in the best practices into their daily output. And I think today's webinar is more about giving them that basic idea of what that structure is, how creative automation can help them adopt that structure, and why designers, especially creative people, should welcome creative automation with open arms because ultimately there is nothing. I don't think for the next 10 years we are building anything that can replace the kind of creativity and ideas the designers infuse. If anything creative automation has done for the people in design, it has really made their lives better. It has made Grinch work absolutely outdated, and I wanted to discuss it with you all today because, as a person who works in branding, as a person who has handled campaigns at scale, I found a lot of utilization for such tools within my work and scope of my work. So I won't take more of your time, just giving you an introduction. I will just jump into the presentation straight now. So, meantime, can I know if there's anybody who's working in branding here? There. Is it visible to all of you?
You can leave your answers in the chat section.
No, it's not visible right now.
Okay,
Not yet.
I'll just share my screen. What about now? Yep. I guess now it will be visible. So,
Yes, we can see.
all right, perfect. So, as I said, we are going to be learning about how to implement automation in design and branding. And as all designers start, first of all, I like to address the audience that would be keen on watching this space and to learn more about this topic. So, if you are a marketing lead, if you are a design mastermind, or if you are a CEO at your own business, or if you are a marketing stalwart working somewhere, this is the thing for you. I think that would largely cover all the profiles here. When I say the design mastermind, I mean all people who are working with UI, UX in front end. I think this is something all of you would like to be aware of, even if you are not going to implement it yourselves, even if you are not the decision makers. This is something that should keep you updated on what is happening in the industry. And anyone who's into marketing efforts, is in content and communication, or is owning their own business that needs a lot of marketing, campaigns, branding. Anybody who's of this profile will find this presentation useful. As you can see, I tried doodling with some sticky notes. I thought that'd be a little interesting for you. Now, why I thought that these people will be interested is because I saw certain pain points in that I figured that different people in these profiles have. Of course, they're different for them. Like, for example, if it's somebody like Amit, who's a operations business vertical lead with an e-com aggregator, or let's say with a bigger company or with a media house, he's leading some effort over there. His pain points are campaign deliveries, product placements, long delivery cycles, and reviews that come with these campaigns that happen at scale. Okay, so first of all, just to be clear, guys, when I say campaigns, we are discussing media campaigns, we are discussing marketing campaigns, we are discussing emailers, we are discussing marketing efforts in totality. So that is what I call a campaign. And as you would all know, when you are releasing new work into the system, there are a lot of issues with reviews. There are a lot of issues with deliveries. I mean, sometimes something as minor as a resolution change causes everything to be held. And God forbid, if there are 100 creators that you're going to launch on a certain day, and suddenly one of the marketing manager barges in and he says, guys, you know what, the copy on this does not look good. Then the onus of it lies on the designer all of a sudden to change that copy in hundreds of those campaigns and then just put them out again. Like there are going to be 100 templates, there's going to be one minor change, and you as a design team would be stuck with making those changes to your campaigns. And it's a lot of work. It might just seem for the marketing manager or for somebody like a business head, it might just seem like one small edit. You just have to change an to a the. But for a designer, that amounts to a lot of repetitive, unnecessary, uncreative work. And in totality, even for the person who's sending you with this task, it means a long delivery time, long delivery cycles, like, and the review also gets delayed, the product placement gets delayed. So it leads to a lot of bad blood between different teams as well. And I saw that, let's say, somebody is working with a business vertical or an e-com aggregator or media house, they would want to push their campaigns out quickly because that is what guarantees them their bread and butter. That is their work at larger organization. So I thought that if they knew about digital asset management, it would help them with adding new innovation to their existing tool suites, adding time, saving time, and adding some more business value. When I say business value, I mean you save time, you launch new campaigns, you measure new campaigns quickly, you measure the return on investment coming from those campaigns quickly, and therefore you are able to make those changes that might be necessary to reposition your campaign, to come up with the newer idea, maybe do a multivariate or an A/B test by pushing out newer creatives. And of course, it also helps in getting in quick reviews from the beta users or your customers, and it also helps them make quick customizations. How we will get to that point slowly, but this is what I thought was of real value to somebody working at the level of a decision maker who's a business or vertical lead. Then, of course, let's come to the primary user over here, the primary touch point for these creative automation tools. It is going to be a designer, of course, somebody who's working with branding, somebody who's working with design, so or a front end, somebody who's a front end lead, somebody who's building coding for the front end. These people are the actual users of these creative automation tools. How does it help them? I don't have to tell you. I mean, सच बताना कितने लोगों का मतलब वाकई वो गुस्सा आता है जब आके एक मार्केटिंग टीम या एक कंटेंट टीम से बंदा आके कहता है यार ये कॉपी ठीक नहीं है, ये फेसबुक पे रेजोल्यूशन नहीं जा रहा है, ये नहीं हो रहा है, वो नहीं हो रहा है. I mean, you can just put that in the chat box and I know it's a real problem when it happens because I've seen it happening so many times in my life. I've lost count. And it's not just that, they expect you to make minor changes very quickly. They think it's just about changing the color, but you know how long will it take for you to readjust that template in about 50 creators you've made for the same campaign and go ahead and ship them out quickly. So, of course, and the other pain points are that you don't want to compromise with the creativity in your work, right? You want the aesthetics to be right. You want the brand consistency to be there. You are the one who has created the logo. You know how good it looks in a certain resolution. You don't want कि जहाँ पे व्हाइट लोगो जाना था वहाँ ब्लैक चला जाए और ये मार्केटिंग वाले आके बस अपना फटाफट जो करना चाहते हैं कर लेते हैं and they think यार we did it just as good as you. No, there's a certain design language, there's a certain brand language that you want to maintain, and you run out of the leverage to do that when you are given work, binge work. That doesn't really require a lot of creativity, but it does require a huge amount of your time. And then there are other issues with it, like editing backlogs or minute changes, and then that project will keep lying with you for a day or two. And the next day, maybe your manager is going to come to you and be like, "Yaar, itna छोटा सा जो काम था, you could have shipped it yesterday. Why is it taking you so long?" And that becomes very frustrating, I think, on a whole for somebody who's working in design. So scaling your efforts without putting in a lot of grinch work is, I think, one benefit that the designers are going to get out of creative automation. And they can also, the best thing is that it gives you more time to learn new skills that you want to adopt. Like a lot of designer friends of mine, they come and ask me, okay, so do you think that I should be knowing, I mean, I'm just a UI graphic designer, should I be knowing about front end? And I'm like, if you have the time, why not? But the person already has so much on their plate that they cannot really dabble into a new skill at that point in time. So they like, so they're always in a very iffy situation. But imagine if you could just reduce your bench work, there'll be a lot of new stuff to learn in the time that you have left with you. So that is again one of the benefits I think out you get out of creative automation. You can just leave the bench work with the automated software, and you can just call in the collaborators to make the small changes that they have to make without compromising on the brand consistency, without compromising on the brand communication. And you can just sit back and do the work you're meant to do, which is creative work, which is ideating new ideas, which is coming up with perhaps, perhaps deciding what is going to be the color scheme for the year 2021. So it will leave you with a lot of time to do the things that you're actually meant to do. Let's move on to the next slide. I'm sorry, it's stuck, I guess. Again, if you're a CEO or a CMO of a mid-size or small e-com venture, if you're running a small startup, if you're running a small business, and you find yourself in a position wherein you have to rebrand and test your branding strategy quite frequently, automation is again going to be of great help to you because it will help reduce that review cycle. When I say automation, I do not just include tools that are going to help you build smart templates. I mean everything. I mean measurement tools. I mean those white labeling tools that you can acquire to make those quick changes, run your digital campaigns on a daily basis. So that helps you save a lot of cost and time. And again, time and money is everything for a business person. And of course, then there are the more senior marketing heads, regional marketing heads, hybrid retailers, even in telecoms. I find like because all these businesses that connect to their customers through the digital channel, which is almost all businesses these days, they need to have a very consistent branding approach. They need to have a very consistent branding language, and they at the same time they need to reinvent their communication every day. Uh, I don't know about all of you, but I do know that Shalok recently worked with Airtel, and I mean, even though like unlike startups, bigger brands do not reinvent themselves in every year or 2 years, but they have a lot of new product lines to launch. They have a lot of new things to do, right, Shilok? I mean, you will be able to tell us better. I mean, even if you push out something as small as a consumer app, which is going to help people build, like, connect with the business, they have to have a consistent interface. They have to have a consistent identity. It should look new, yet it should be compliant with the brand established earlier. It should have some, like, it should look fresh, but at the same time it should not be too fresh as to deviate from the branding guidelines. So all these people can also look forward to automation and asset management in digital and spaces and creatives as a solution for this. And the other thing is the best practices that they'll get with the campaigns, the seamless integration that they will get with the current creative suites. These are also issues that they have. And again, I'll just explain how automation can be implemented into the existing cycles and to the existing teams to make sure that they get the best out of them. Okay, so in totality, creative automation helps shorten cycles of creation and editing and recreation, thus scaling productivity. It also leaves creative people with the time to build on their T-shaped skills. So as I said, T-shaped skills, I mean, you can look at the T as the vertical line of the T is your core skill, and the horizontal line of the T is the side skills that you need to acquire to make yourself a more efficient worker. Now, for example, as a designer, nobody ever told me that or as a person who was in marketing, nobody ever told me that I had to study psychology. But the more I got into psychology and studying how to influence people, how to like put an idea in their head, how to go about doing that with design really helped me. And and at the same time, as somebody who was into branding and was into content and was pushing out these campaigns every day, I found it very difficult to sit down with a book or some coursework on psychology because every day meant collaboration with the designer, collaboration with my content person, making sure that these things run smoothly. And when I looked at it, I was not doing anything effectively. I mean, my whole task was to communicate between the two people who could have just communicated with each other through a shared screen or a shared asset, and it was unnecessary. It took up a lot of my time for no reason at all. And then I learned about digital asset management and how these tools can actually help cut my work, cut the kitch out, cut the bridge work out. I was actually mighty impressed with how much time I saved. And this is from my experience. Campaigns that used to go out in about a week started taking 4 days. So that means I just cut that cycle by 3 days, wherein a copywriter would come to me, give me brilliant copy, and then I would tell the designer to just make sure that this looks like this, that. No, my review cycles became shorter. I didn't have to go to my designer every time I had to put it on a different channel for marketing. I didn't have to go to him and say, "By resolution, badal de, please, ab Facebook pe jayega." So all this stopped just because we adopted certain tools for automation, and I think that is one of the biggest benefits to have, especially when you're doing campaigns and branding at scale, when you're advertising at scale, because when you have to send out about 50 creators in a day or 100 creators in a day, it's quite a task. Of course, even products and even the SaaS industry benefits a lot. And I should say that the inspiration to add automation to my work started coming to me when I started working with developers, when I started working with people in the SaaS industry, when I saw how they maintained their Kanban boards, what did they do for quick communication and collaboration, how did they go about their review cycles. So the tech industry is very astute with all of this already. They have already adopted all of these best practices, and that's why they do so well. Whereas as like design, because design includes not just SaaS and not just user interfaces, it also includes graphics, it also includes branding language, it also includes marketing communication, it also includes content, UX content, and all of these areas. So these people, like we people, find it difficult to imbibe this quite naturally, because at the end of the day, we do not treat our product, which is our design, creatives, or our communication, as a physical product. So we don't look at the building time, cycles, this, that, review as something of value to the product in itself. But when you have a physical product to build, when you have something more substantial, people start putting these metrics, putting these cycles on them. However, I realized that even our work, the creatives that we're making, the communication we're sending out, these are also finished products. And they need improvisation, constant improvisation. They need constant reviews. And there should be something built for them to make our tasks easier. So that is the idea I'd like to share with you all today. And let's start with the actual content. So first of all, what do we need to solve these problems? We already discussed our pain points. Our review cycles are long. People are not working efficiently because they have to do binge work. People are not able to ship out in time because there are some minor changes here and there. So what to do? So design is, I feel like, design in itself is just a tool to create effective communication with consumers and users. It could be interfacial design, it could be a brand design, but ultimately what you're trying to do is you're trying to have an effective interaction with the person sitting on the other end. Now, this communication is decided by multiple teams in all spheres. Like, for example, if you're in media, it will be decided by the editor in chief, it will be decided by the person who's taking care of your marketing budgets, it will be decided by the CEO, it will be decided by the branding head, and then, of course, the journalists who are going to write for you because they're the ones who are going to build that product. So, all of this is going to be decided by all the people. The entirety of this communication is not coming from one source. And add to that, if you are in a technical, like, if you are in a tech heavy industry, if you are actually building a tech product, then there are also going to be people from the tech side, like engineers, or there are going to be other people involved who are going to do the nitty gritties, the technical nitty gritties of it. Some things that as a designer or maybe as a content creator or as a marketer, I won't be able to figure out unless they spell it out for me. So, however, when there are so many people involved, so this brings me to my second point. When there's so many people involved, there's always a margin for error, which means that because there's so much of human dependency in all these different areas, there's always chaos, indecisiveness. The branding head dreams of pink as the color for him, and the next day he wakes up and he says, "Oh no, the competitor has already used like fuchsia. So I can't go with pink, otherwise I'll end up creating something that's just a little lighter. It won't have the same impact. This that." He comes in the next day and he says, "Nahi, nahi, boss, nahi ho sakta. Let's do something different." And suddenly somebody who's been working on the templates already goes like, "Yeah, अब तो almost shift करने के time पर आ गए थे. Why do I need to do this again?" Of course, it's not a great task. Honestly speaking, it's just one click of on your Photoshop and just you just change the background color and all that shit. But then, as a designer, you will not be pleased aesthetically with that because you would have designed everything keeping a certain color, brand scheme in mind, and then suddenly somebody walks in and says, "Isko fuchsia kar do." Doesn't work like that. So I know how it works, and it kind of creates a lot of, again, unnecessary frustration and a lot of binge working. So I often say that who suffers from this indecisiveness, the design team mostly, but who suffers in totality, productivity, business, and campaign budgets as well. And ultimately, you'll ask me, okay, so how can automation help this out? We are going to move on to that. So, who are your co-collaborators? So, this is for the design team. Your co-collaborators are basically different people from different teams, and the idea is not to use the people. The idea is to use their efforts, which means, let's say you have a content person. The person has written good copy, and now he wants to infuse that new idea into your existing templates. But you suddenly say, "Yaar, ab kaise hoga? How do I change the message now? You told me you gave me 25 lines yesterday. Where is this 26 line coming out from?" Then you say, "No, boss, I had a it's a better idea. It just communicates this better, and everybody agrees. But you know that you have to do a lot of work." So would you rather not have that person have the independence to do that work themselves and be able to infuse it into your designs rather than saying a simple no? I think you would all agree if it's in the best interest of your workplace, of the product you're pitching, of the media brand you're pitching, you would all want to do that. Only thing is that what restrains you is the cycles, the deadlines that you have to meet, perhaps the wrench and the work and the effort that you have to put. So if you could just take that out of the equation, you will be shipping your best out, and you will also be helping your team members to ship their best out. Then again, marketing teams, subject matter experts, anybody who has something to infuse into the design, anybody who thinks that there is an edit that will make it better, they can come in and they can collaborate with these tools together, and they can ease this whole process in this cycle. So how can they do that? So first of all, this whole area of improvement of automation, it is brought to effect by this. This is a terminology, but it essentially is asset management. And when you say asset management, it is not only about creation and distribution, it is also about the reviews, it is also about the delivery time, it is also about preserving, archiving, and then reusing those assets when you are going to need to pull them out. For example, there are a lot of versions that we create, right? And I think this is going to be common across branding as well as user interface development. We create a lot of versions, and sometimes in the middle of something, we realize that perhaps the first UI flow, some element from the first UI flow goes better with the element from the second version of the next, of the same. And then you kind of want to go back to that, but you are not able to do it on the move. You're not able to do it on the fly. So of course you are human and you get lazy and you don't do that. But if it were the best thing to do, doing the you would. I mean, you would want to do your best too, and that is how I feel the the artificial intelligence part of it is the human intelligence, because it helps the humans merge in their best efforts and their best ideas quickly and effectively. So coming back to it, there's various tools that can be used at different stages. I'm sure at the create stage, all of us are already using some kind of an editor or a Photoshop, like something, or creative tools like Photoshop, creative tools like Sketch, creative tools like uh, online creative tools like Canva Enterprise. Some of you might be using that, others not. Then to to classify them is something that designers don't spend a lot of their know-how on. They just keep them saved in a repository. You might, if it's your personal work, you might put it on Behance. You might create a channel. You might create a work channel under your company's name to put and save all your reviews, templates, and everything over there. But it's not exactly the best way to manage that, because again, Behance is a very designer-friendly tool. Not designer friendly, actually it's a very user friendly tool as well, but Behance is not something that is popular with everyone across the teams. I don't see how a marketing person would benefit from having a Behance profile. So maybe you, even if you have it on a platform, you're not able to share it with other people through that platform. Then you need to get those templates reviewed. Somebody is going to annotate them, somebody is going to approve them. When I say annotation, I mean, of course, because all of us are good at different things, right? Some of the creative people are really good with the design, with the creative scheme, with the color schemes, with the graphics. They are excellent with placing the right placement of communication. And then there are other people who are really good at writing. They're good at communicating a message in a crisp, short method. And all these people, you always want to put the best work together, because one person cannot be good at everything. So when you say, I'm going to work with this person, and that person knows nothing about design, and suddenly all of the creative work comes to you, you are the one who's going to decide on the calligraphy, you are the one who's going to do that, you are the one who's going to, and they just keep sending in a line after line. That line is also going to take them a lot of effort, but compared to the effort that you're going to be giving in to put that, to arrange it in a proper manner, you will feel like this is a little unfair to me. So see, this person can write 30, 40 copyright copies. This person can do that. But for me to infuse the 30, 40 copies in the next 24 hours, this is not going to be possible. So how do we manage that? It's simple. You just fix a template, you fix the calligraphy, you fix the design fundas, and you let the other person do what they do the best. So this way, it reduces the time that is taken for that person to communicate their message to you, and for you to translate that message into your designs. And it just leaves this person with the task to create everything. And once you fix the design side of it, they can just simply go and type it on the template that you have created through their typewriters, just as they would in a Word document. Because you have taken care of everything, like the size, the calligraphy that you wanted to review, the text style, the font, everything. You've taken care of that, and you can leave them to do what they do the best. Third, we come to the distribution, because all of you know that just creating content is not going to help, right? You're going to have to distribute it on different channels. And when you're going to distribute it on different channels, the message is going to go out in different places. It's going to need a change in perhaps resolution and even appearance sometimes. As you would know, sometimes when I end up creating banner ads, this is a huge problem in media. And when you create banner ads, and they are going to be in different sizes, sometimes it's going to be the sidebar, sometimes it's going to be the top bar, so when you are going for those different sizes, it's not easy to put in everything that you want to in a small creative. So it really makes the person pick and choose between these things. Of course, then we got programmatic advertising, and suddenly everything just sorted itself out. Machine could decide what part of the communication it had to put, how it had to show it, and where could it go. As soon as you change the size and the ad network and the publisher, it would resize it to it, and then distribute it there. And now, luckily, for even for interface designers and for campaign managers and for branding people, there are tools that actually help you create. You have created one creative, you can go on to it goes on to recreate it for different social media channels. You just have to specify the social media channel with a drop list, and that's it. Bam! It just rearranges your whole creative to be suitable for that particular channel. And then once you're done with that one campaign, you're going to again launch a different campaign, right? And who says that all of your work is useless after that? Those who are very familiar with development would be familiar with the terminology called 3 Rs, which is to reuse, recycle, and reproduce. Sorry, it's recycle, reuse, and reduce, which means that you recycle and or upcycle your work that you have done before to create new work. It also means that you reuse what your co-collaborators have built. When I say co-collaborators, you might have in a design team. There's never a single designer. You might have a second person in working with you, and usually the interactions that happen between the people are, "भाई वो जो तूने बताया था, please रख दे दे. I can use that." Or you might have be sharing a design repository and you'll be taking it out. But imagine if you could do that with every piece of content, every piece of copy ever created, because you have it properly indexed to a proper asset management platform with you. And whenever you think that, and you have the option of, and it's not just about you recollecting from memory that somebody had built something very good and I can use that. It's about quick results, like you get a quick Google search result on any topic you want to read on, you get a quick search result from the asset management index, the software's index, and you can quickly infuse whatever designs you feel would best look great within the new campaign that you're shipping. So how does that help you? Of course, it reduces the time you would have spent making a new graphic, perhaps. It reduces the time you would have spent perhaps designing a new font. It reduces the time you would have spent picking out a new template, and it just gave you everything on a platter. And then for this to happen, you have to archive them properly. So that is the fifth and the last step, which is to preserve all of your work. And not just yours, your copywriters, your marketing team's endeavors, the channels you're going to distribute on, the complexities involved with communicating the logo versions, the versions of the campaigns you had created previously. And all of this helps because, in a world that is driven by metrics today, once you are building multiple campaigns and you have things like multivariate testing and all, you can't dispose of any version. So to be able to archive them properly using the least amount of physical storage space is also a task. And these digital asset management tools also take care of that part. I remember when I started off, I said this is in tune with the best practices. So just let's move on to the best practices that are currently recognized in the industry. So this is based on basically lean branding principles. And as I said, any one of you who's into user interface design or user interface development will be very familiar with this cycle of build, measure, and learn. This is how products are being built primarily. Again, the people who are working with media, people who are working with the other conservative industries that have not really taken or adopted these strategies, it might be something new, but I'm sure those of you who are working in software are very familiar with this. And now this, so Eric Schmidt started with it, and this particular chapter of branding was written by Laura Bush. So if you guys are keen on learning more about lean branding principles, then I would suggest that you get this book. It's a really good book. It will really help you infuse the best practices into your design and branding endeavors. So let's come to the first one. It's build. So as I said, when you are creating, build is all about doing the creative work, the strategy, the symbol, the story, the copy. Then you move on to measure. When you say measure, I think there was somebody very recently asked me to send them some metrics, a template on the group. So all that is also included here. And if you adopt a good digital asset management suite, you will find that the metrics and the analytics also come with it. Like, because these asset management tools, when you're collaborating with the marketer, with your branding head, with your marketing head, these digital asset management tools also provide quick metrics and review updates based on those metrics. So let's say one of your campaigns did 75% better than another one of your campaigns. So when you start indexing, when you go to that software and you start indexing on the basis of the campaign performances, you will also get that aligned. So you will know, you will also get to see which work of yours generated better reviews, which work of yours got better results. And it will not be just based on your managers or for that matter, the marketing person's point of view. It won't be their POV anymore. It will be hardcore data, which I think is very necessary for anybody to kind of evaluate their own work. So evaluation of your own work would become easy, and then finally from that evaluation and from constantly experimenting, because now that you have the time and shorter productivity cycles, shorter production cycles, you will be able to reposition, redesign and rechannel, learning from all of this, and then finally putting it into a different, putting it in a different template, shipping it out quickly, finally figuring out what is it that you need to change in order to create better campaigns, better communication, better design for your brand. So this is why I say that automation and the best practices go hand in hand. I know this is a little too much and it's certainly thrown at you. So at the end of this, of course, there's going to be a Q&A session. And if there is anything at all you guys need, maybe some research material to read further on, do ping me. So I think I'll be able to share more material with you on the same, and that would help clarify a lot of doubts. So I already discussed the 3R theory, and when it's applied to design, what it means. Recycle means to upcycle old design and templates to speed up work delivery and scale up efforts. Reuse is to take help from others by using their repository and created graphics and templates, or even to use white labeling platforms. What are white labeling platforms? White labeling platforms are platforms that allow you to, so you basically, I think the best example and the most widespread example is Canva, right? So it lets you use its templates, lets you use its graphics, and ultimately you end up, like, even if you're a mom and pop store, or if you're a small startup, you use a Canva enterprise, you'll end up putting your own logo on their platform. Similarly, a lot of big organizations, they take third-party vendors, they use their creative platforms, they infuse it within their small, within their space or their website, but they brand it as their own platform or product. Without taking any names, there are e-commerce giants that infuse softwares coming from third-party startups or smaller companies, and then they encourage the end user, which is the seller of a product on their platform, to use that within the interface that they have created. The product is not their own, but they are white labeling it and they're using it to kind of present a better interface for shopping for the end consumer. So reusing technology that is built by other people, or reusing graphics that is built by other people, is also something that helps you to scale down your efforts. Reduce, of course, as I said, it reduces your effort, time in binge work. It also reduces the unnecessary assets. I'm sorry I didn't mention it over here, but it also reduces that work of creating unnecessary versions, unnecessary assets, and it also helps you use the time, which is the most important asset that any one of us has over here. Moving on, I also tried building some use cases. Some of them are from my practical experience. Some of them I have not yet happened, but I think I might experience. So these are some of the use cases I think are aided very well by creative automation. So rebranding and versioning. When you are rebranding. So first of all, rebranding is a cycle in a cycle for a startup, or some new company happens in should ideally happen in every 1.5 year, 6 months to 2 years, I would say, and that depends on the stage the startup is at. So let's say you are going to launch an e-commerce website, right? initially you will not be getting a lot of traffic, but you will get an idea that there's a certain appeal that some page is creating more appeal to the user, some product is creating more appeal, or some template is creating a different kind of an appeal for the end user. So you will always want to design more around that. And similarly, let's say if your brand is not clicking with the audience segment you wanted to go for, let's say you built a brand for your younger user, but you see that not a lot of younger users are, they may be buying, some people might be buying the products, any young user that is coming in, let's say somebody from an 18 to 35-year-old, the convert, if they have landed up on your website and just stayed in for like 5 to 10 minutes, they've ended up buying from you. It means that you have the products for a younger audience. But if the bounce rate is too high at the same time and the people who are in that age category are leaving pretty quickly, then you know that there is something wrong perhaps with the look and feel of your website. Because you know that a lot of millennial customers not just buy a product, they also buy a feel and a brand. So you would want to rebrand and do that quickly. And when you are and you're also constrained by budgets, so it's not like you're going to send it out to a creative agency or a branding platform. What can you do? You can of course adopt an automation, work with your existing team of in-house designers. 1 or 2 people are enough because it's a smaller website. Because like even if you can work with a team of 1 or 2 people, it's enough, and you can just adopt these white labeling tools. You can adopt these creative automation tools, and you can ship out work quickly. It can also help you with your daily marketing efforts. You'll realize that one campaign of yours got you better traffic from a certain social media platform. So you can keep pushing the same kind of templates every day. You don't even need a designer to do that for you. If you're in a very early stage and you think that paying like designer is like a very very good designer is becoming too much of a task for you. Of course, nobody can replace the creativity and the knowledge that they will come into, that they'll pitch in. If they're a very, if it's an experienced person, they'll come in with the branding ideas that no automation tool will be able to give you. But let's say if it's just about making a small change to a daily campaign, you can't go back to that person and keep, like, it's going to be too much work and it's going to be too much cost. So as a CEO of a small website, you could perhaps include these white labeling tools, work with a novice, and still be able to ship out daily. Then the second thing is more pertinent to bigger organizations in media, in publishing, in even in branding and retail. So there's a lot of legal harassment. There's a lot of talk about intellectual property rights happening in the country right now. To give you an idea, intellectual property rights is about claiming rights on a intellectual property, which could be a creative, it could be a content piece, it could be a short movie, it could be music that you've created. So now you see that suddenly the Indian, the legal industry is now full of these lawsuits. So large organizations need to avoid getting into legal trouble, and therefore they need to have their creatives in place. Nobody can ship out content that is not reviewed or for copyright troubles. By which I mean is, like, if you are a marketer like me, you would realize it's very difficult to go around the branding heads in different companies unless they're absolutely sure that something that you have infused into the product is just an inspiration. And even if it's just an inspiration, it is not colliding too much with the identity of another organization. It could even be something as a color. I mean, I remember hashtag FB6006 was a yellow that I used. And uh, I was unfortunately working with the branding head of Ogilvy at that time. He was somebody from the Middle East, and he just told me I can't use this color. And I was like, why? It's the one that goes the best with the gray I have infused into this, and you should consider it. I mean, they look very nice together. Yellow and gray, it's the best contrast. So no, I can't use this color because you don't understand. A competitor of mine has used this color, and they have kind of, this particular shade. I know this guy's going to have a problem with. And I was like, boss, it's just a color. And I got the wake up call of my life. He said, we're in branding, it's not just a color. It was my devil in Parada moment. You know what I'm talking about. How Meryl Streep just goes on to scold her for the civil game. So he said, no, I am going to be facing $1 million lawsuit because of it. I won't take it. So these are the kind of things. Now, how does creative automation help here? Let's say you had one meeting with that branding head, okay, and you're a designer. And now this communication, because you are the head of design or you are the person in touch with this person, you will never make that mistake. But there are going to be people in your team who might end up making that mistake. And the kind of trouble it's going to put you and the place of work you are at, it's just avoidable. To just lock that, if you just lock and preserve that asset, if you lock and preserve that scheme and you don't let people, like, you don't even need to tell the marketing team. Even if the design team listens to you, marketing team may not. You don't have to mess with anybody. You can just say, okay, yeah, you can ship this out. I've logged this. Just take it from this particular software. Don't make your creatives available on mail. Don't make them available on any communication platform because you already have a creative automation suite that allows any stakeholder to share the version you have created immediately. You don't even have to drop them mails. So that would ensure that you never, ever end up in any kind of a legal suit or hassle. Then the last is, of course, to maintain brand identity. Anybody who's worked with branding knows what I'm talking about, and anybody who's worked with branding with marketing novices also knows what I'm talking about. It's just very difficult to make people agree to a consistency in your brand. And it doesn't even matter if you're a startup, even if you're a SaaS product, I think it's very important to build a design language from the very beginning. Again, how do I know that? You see any bootstrap startup, you see any funded startup, those who have gone on to do well, they create a name for itself, for themselves right at the beginning. Like the Flipkart logo has been reinvented many times, but there was a certain consistency with the color scheme, always. Similarly, let's look at the smaller startups, like you have BWO, you have Pinify. They always had that violet flat icon all the time. They wanted to make it flat, they wanted to make it very minimal, and they stuck to that identity. Similarly, if you're going to look at Reliance, no matter what they do, they always present those colors and that logo. So it's very important for any brand, be it a small like tech brand, be it a large scale business, be it a mid-sized business, to be consistent with the kind of communication they are going to send out. So again, locking down a smart template, sharing it only on these softwares, and collaborating. Even if you're like, even if it's going to be very dynamic, even if it's the communication is going to change every day, making sure that the freshness does not go out, but the consistency remains the same. I think it's something that these automation platforms can really help us with. So if you're looking for digital asset management and media asset management softwares, these are some of the people you would like to go to. Some of them are big brand players. Brandfolder and Finder, I found that they are like more towards the industry and enterprise side. They cater to bigger names. Like Brandfolder has worked with February Sashi, and Binder is, I think, currently being used by Puma, and even like I think they worked with Ogilvy for a while. So now, what do they do? Like, why would Ogilvy, you would say, why does the branding board need Binder? Simple, because what we do in-house at a smaller scale, Ogilvy does with perhaps thousands of clients every day. They have to share their assets with teams, international teams of different brands. Like if today a Puma is going to call them up and say we need this, and Puma will have its in-house branding and design team. They like what Ogilvy did, but they would want to infuse something of their own. They can't always keep calling Ogilvy for the same. There's an understanding between the two. There's already a paid amount of sum that guarantees that Puma can do something or the other with its own creatives. They won't always be tapping Ogilvy to do it for them. So they share these, they collaborate on these repositories within Binder. I'm not saying they always do, but this is ideally how it should happen. They collaborate on this repository with Binder, and then let's say the Puma brand head has something to add to, the Ogilvy person takes it down. Or for that matter, if the Puma brand wants to make a small change to the copy and the content, they go ahead with it. Smartly.io, again, if you guys are not exactly working with a large organization and your independent content creators or your independent designers or your independent or your freelancers, I would suggest you check out smartly.io. Of course, it's going to be a little costly, and I would advise you guys to jump in if you're not doing campaigns at scale. But if you're working with a lot of brands like, I mean, uh, upcoming startups, and you have a lot of work at hand from these people, like let's say perhaps a Nicobar, or for that matter, you create some helping somebody create a new retail brand, I would suggest you go on smartly.io, because this is an offering that will also add to your smart skills. As in, if you tell people like, okay, I can share a repository with you, and we can upkeep this repository together, in this repository together, and this will let you access your designs and my creative work free. It'll be great for you. Then brand folder, again, if you're a bigger organization, you might want to adopt them. There are some Indian players too. They're on the cheaper side, but again, the Indian players are not really working for individuals; they're working for organizations. One of them is Rocketium. I suggest you guys give them like go to the website, like give them a shot, and that is it. That's all. That's all I had to tell you about creative automation for the day. I know it's very little, and some of you might be left like asking for more on certain topics. I'm sure you would want to see it in practice somewhere. You want to see a tool running and demos and all. And I'm sorry, because of the limitation of the time, I could not include a demo for you. But in case you want to reach out with any questions, if you want more research material, if you want me to send you out any links, demo links, or to keep adopting this as a practice within your organization, and you want someone to consult with, I'm always open to like getting feedback and questions from you. So that's all my end. We can resume with the Q&A session.
Yes, guys. So if you guys have question, you can post it in the chat section. Right. Meanwhile, I will discuss the branding part with Aditi. So recently, what I have figured out, right? So I'm currently working with UC, right, as a single product designer, and we are basically like facing some challenges on the color level, like how we can. So UC has different categories, like salon, and there is carpenter, electrician, and all those things. And there is one color which UC has, that is black as a primary and blue as a CTA color. So what we were thinking that can we introduce category level, basically colors. For instance, salon ke liye we can use some pinkish color, electrician ke liye we can use some electric blue color, right? But at the end of the day, the challenge comes up at that point. Like if you introduce those many colors, then what is a brand color?
Yeah, that's very. I think that's exactly as I pointed out. Like when you are creating a brand, you have to infuse fresh ideas without compromising on the like the consistency.
Right,
So I
right.
think the best idea is to adopt a color suite. Like what I used to do was, let's say you can always pick a family of complementary colors
Hmm.
that will go very well together. So
Hmm.
maybe it cannot be, it could be not a very electric blue, but it could be something that's similar to a black. There's
Black.
going to be, you get it right, there's going to be this family of colors. Like
Right.
which kind of blue would look just a little different from black. It would look blue still, it would look different on the screen, but it won't be a lot of deviation.
Right, right.
So
And even like during this
so
exercise only, like we identified that the potential of black color. We believe like earlier it was more like black hum use kar rahe hain, black hai, but now we believe that black is much more premium, right? The like basically the way it looks and feel, right? It's basically depends on the usage of the black. How do you represent that black, right? So at that point of time, black, like we understood the potential of black color in branding part, right? To show the premium things up front, and basically use the black color as CTA, use the black color in other contexts, right? So those are the few learnings which we had earlier regarding this branding session.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm sorry to about branding, but again, how automation can help since it was about automation, I'll just tell you very quickly. So there's this site called Figma Paints, right? Figma is the company that decides on the color of the year every year. 2019 it was ultraviolet. Then this year, in the Corona crisis, I kind of didn't really figure out, but ultraviolet was the color for 2020.
Hmm.
Now,
Hmm.
what you do is, and when you adopt some creative pattern, अभी नहीं आया है, but this is like some news with AI coming up. They're trying to do is they're trying to auto-generate suggestions. So while you're building something, let's say like you right, I want that. I know it's about premium color. So with those AI-enabled suggestions, what they'll do is they'll have all that research with them, what looks good for branding and all, and they'll throw those at yes, Figma, Figma. Okay. I think Parul's calling me on WhatsApp, so
Yeah.
I'll just connect to him.
Yeah.
So you can always uh, when these kind of changes come to our existing tools, you'll
Yeah.
again see that you have a lot of things to play with, and you won't even have to ask someone because with the research, with the analytics part all considered, with your templates like measured and everything,
Hmm.
the software itself will throw you the suggestion that is going to be optimum for you to apply. So I guess that's still about 2 years away or ahead. Like it's going to come sometime.
Alok is saying something. Yes, Alok.
Yes, my question is like in the branding, how do we include like with respect to colors and fonts, right? How do we generate the gender neutrality and accessibility also? In India, like I don't know, people don't care too much about accessibility while designing the products, right? It's all chaos on the banner,
That
it's all chaos in the buttons.
that's very true. But on the same lines, Alok, like this was a question that I was also like very flummoxed by once. So this is what I was suggested. Use instead of using colors that are very specific to a certain gender, use used. Like as you said, blue, maybe like a pink, as you said, is going to make it look very effeminate, and men might not be able to relate with it. But at the same time, if you take blue and you turn it to a bit of a mauve, right? That might just work because it's going to appeal to all the people. So the idea is to introduce neutrality even in our point of view. Of course, like I can't just say yeah, everybody should wear pink and they'll agree to it, but I can always introduce this concept of pastel hues to even men, and they might like it. Again, I don't just say it intuitively. I think again, this is intuition and this is just a hypothesis, and we can always measure the results we get from it. You can even do one thing. So this is a question I give to the people who turn up with such questions. I do a A/B testing kind of a thing. So for half the app users, like for half the app users, I do a version release in which I have adopted a new color, right? And for the rest of the half, I go with the color that I think might work for them. So one is to stick to the book and go with the conservative colors, and the other is to use your intuition and go with a new version. And you distribute it on half, push half of it to one section of your users, and especially if you are at an urban lab or where you have about 10,000 people coming in every day on your application, it's a very easy thing to do because you have a lot of data points. So when you
Yes.
split it into a half and do that split test kind of a thing, you will figure out immediately. Nobody will have to tell you. The data will speak for itself.
Right.
So
Right.
one method is to do that. If you want to ask me how can I do it with an algorithm,
One more question. Like the color combination you just described, like yellow and gray, right? And for which your client pointed out, like find this color has been a competitor's color. Even I was thinking about the theme. Yellow and the gray is the theme of Ernst and Young also, E&Y. So it's a very deep, like
yeah.
a dark hole. How do we are sure like there is no IPR? Nobody will sue us for an IPR.
See, intellectual property rights. So yeah, it's something that individuals don't need to be very scared of. Again, talking through my experience, a lot of big brands get into these tussles quite a lot because for them it means millions and millions of dollars spent. However, as a person who's going to be working with such an organization, my good advice to you is that when you collaborate with the people who are making these decisions, you lock down on a idea. And and when you so this is where the whole automation and asset management things comes in, right? अगर मेरा मन हुआ तो यार I can of course shift to a color code. I can just shift it a little and I say यार ये भी तो वैसा ही दिख रहा है. In fact, it's looking better because my font is suddenly more visible. But at the same time, I know I cannot compromise on that. So if a new designer comes in tomorrow and he says, "Oh, I just turned it a notch down because I thought my font was looking better on this or this was looking better on this." And no, you can't always keep hackling a person for that, right? So the best thing that you can do is you can lock that template. You can make sure that within that asset management software of yours, which is the only platform where you will be making these changes, they do not mess it up. That is how it ensures the consistency. That is how automation covers the consistency part of it. For the new designers who are coming in, of course, there's always going to be a creative, like if you want to make changes. As we all collaborate for a creative meeting, I would suggest that have those meetings every 2 weeks. Like, talk to your team every 2 weeks to figure out if there are some new ideas that you can use, and then you can go on and make changes in that software, but lock down those changes for the next 2 weeks so that everybody is on the same page for those 2 weeks. If tomorrow all of you agree that we can play around with the color a bit because the font choice will be better, लगेगा, the whole team agrees, then yes, that can be done. But just because one person thought it would look better, and even if it does look better, you cannot compromise on the consistency that you have created with larger organizations.
Yes.
Exactly. So on this point, I will share my experience of Airtel, right? So recently, I have worked on this Airtel का homepage का redesign, right? So initially, it started like जब आप कोई भी project start करते हैं, it's the bitter truth that management will tell you कि do whatever you want to do, right? You have the creative freedom. आप करो, ठीक है? आप इसको rocket बना दो. But when you actually rocket बनाओ और present करोगे at the end of the day, the multiple stakeholders will tell you, hey, this is not our color, this is not my color, right? This is not brand color. So there are lots of things happened, and this is the how Airtel is being so much consistent like till date in the red color because of the brand team in that company, right? Brand team is that much strict over there, like they don't allow any color, right? Any shade of blue, any shade of green, anything. They only allow red, white and gray. That's it. So initially I redesigned the homepage in very cool pastel colors, right? Okay, we will use this color. But when I presented that design, they're like, change each and everything into red, right? And as a designer, we have a fight with red, right? ये red क्यों use करना है? This is the big fight which we are fighting nowadays.
Red is the color of legends, man. Red is the color why Jonathan Ive was woken up at 2:30 a.m. by a very, very mad Steve Jobs. Not looking for on my screen. So we know red is not exactly the color.
Exactly. So my last two organization was basically brand color was red, Rivigo was red, right, and Airtel is red, right. So working with red color, is a huge task, right? It's a huge task when you work with red color as a brand color. Lots of people will talk about the brand color को CTA color में convert कर दो red. नहीं red color का CTA देखेंगे errors कैसे दिखेगा, क्या होगा नहीं होगा. There is lots of to and fro, there are lots of questions around it. But at the end of the day, brand color should be maintained on the home, any page you design. So by saying this, brand color can be used in the icon, right? Just like a small tint of it. Brand color can be used as basically tab के नीचे जो एक छोटा सा बार होता है, like that. Brand color can be used as a small text. अगर red आपका brand color है तो, right? So I think brand color and product design, right? Both should be aligned on that part also, because there is too much fight on that part. बहुत ज़्यादा fight है.
And other thing that again from the automation point of view, अब क्या हो रहा है? They have these because so many people are building these tools for A/B testing and even for mocks. So what they do is that even your brand head or the person who's a decision maker, there are these things. जैसे हम GUIs use करते हैं. They can just simply go to that place, click, like it will give them the option of putting a color by just showing 5-6 प्राइमरी कलर्स, फिर उसके अंदर वो चेंजेस वगैरह करेंगे. वो अगर रेड डाल के खुद देख सके कि वो कितना भद्दा लग रहा है, I think there's nothing like it. So that is why again a place where I would really advise people to adopt automation, so that, and even let's say they don't want to look at it. Imagine, yeah, you would work so much, so hard, change the color, and then again you will be like, ये तो अच्छा नहीं लग रहा है. Instead, just when the person says, if you could just click on a small tab, change that color there, and then see, this is how horrible it's going to look. Do you want to go with it or not?
Exactly.
It eases your work quite a lot.
Yes, Alok, continue.
यस, हमारी टीम ने गेट इमेजेस से एक इमेज परचेज की और हमने अपने बैनर पे लगाया होम पेज के, और लगभग 10 दिन बाद वही डेलॉयट की वेबसाइट पे वो इमेज फ्लोट कर रहा था. उन्होंने भी लिया वो गेट इमेज से. तो मार्केटिंग टीम कहती कि हम लोगों ने चोरी किया, बिकॉज हम छोटी कंपनी है, राइट, कि हमने डेलॉयट का डिजाइन कॉपी कर लिया. तो ऐसे सिचुएशन को कैसे हैंडल करें, क्योंकि वो तो कॉमन रिपोजिटरी है सबके लिए.
ऐसे सिचुएशन को हैंडल करने के लिए तो there is no tool. There is only one tool, the tongue. You have to go out and explain the marketing team that this is a free repository. On the other hand, I would suggest that Getty Images and all these places जहाँ पे हमें पता है कि stock photos are going to be commonly used, it's better not to. It's better to go to other lesser known websites. Some of them are even free. There's Shutterstock also, I would advise. I keep forgetting the name of that particular website. Splash Photos, Splash or something.
Flash, Pixel. So I will share one post, Alok, with you, right?
Yes.
Recently I have found it on Instagram, right? There's 30 cool, basically I will just go through it. There is 30 websites, free stock websites, where you can basically download the this thing. So here is the list. I think is it visible or not? So no, it's okay. Wait, let me share this, right? I'll share it on WhatsApp. Meanwhile, you can continue. I will share this with you.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil.
Yeah.
Viva Photography is saying this continue in English, and I would agree. There's a lot of multilingual people here. I don't know to. So just for the last bit, what I was saying is that it's better to use repositories and stock photos from places that are not very common. If that means that you should go to Splash Photography, you should go to Pixels and all of these places, and you should try to. Also, I would advise that if you can, it's cheaper to spot hunt upcoming photographers. Give them the credit, and then ask. Sometimes they don't even ask for like royalty, because they're also trying to get discovered, right? If you
Yes.
can, and this is not an advice for bigger organizations, because I understand there are certain limitations that you come with. But if you're building from a small and medium enterprise perspective, you can always add a small credit somewhere in your website, mentioned like on the creative, for the creators. It's a good practice to do that.
Right.
And if it's just a content sharing website, a media website, please share credit with the people who have made creatives, who have clicked your photographs. It's a good thing to do. I know that a lot of newspapers, lots of digital channels, not newspapers but digital channels, they kind of they exploit people, like who are creating content independently by not mentioning their names. It's not right. Any respectable journal, publication, if any one of you works in publishing, as a designer, as a creative person, it's your onus to make sure it doesn't happen with you or happen with anyone if it has ever happened to you. So please do share credits and buy content from independent creators. They are like difficult to find, but it gets better.
Right.
Then WhatsApp group sharing and gaining knowledge in future. Yes, Jatin, we have a WhatsApp group. Kindly share your number. I will add you in our IDF WhatsApp group. Yeah, thank you. Guys, do we have any more questions so that we can wrap this up, or we can move ahead?
Aditi, please answer. answer his question, Deva.
Parul, do we have questions?
Yeah, there is this guy. He has Viva Photography has asked question. If you can just scroll a little up, Aditi, you'll find a question.
I will just repost it.
Can you see?
Some material for UX process step.
Sure, definitely. You are looking for lean UX, or are you looking for something in branding specifically?
Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, sure here. And see, when I go through in the UX standard process, I can see there is a lot of steps they are taking it up, like card sorting or anything. But I lightly confused which step I had to take it first and one by one. I actually learned a couple of process, but I actually confused like which one how to take it first. So the step by step how it will be how it we how to segregate these steps.
All right. I think you want a primer on UX first, right? Like something very primary, something for a beginner. Are you very accustomed to the topic, or is it that you're just beginning now?
Uh, is it it is something like when we are starting a project. Okay, so when we getting the requirement from the stakeholder or customers. So what will be the first step we have to take it? Like we should be taking the empathy cracking or what is the steps, the first step, and what will be the next step, and that level of process.
The first step is always like, of course, I send you a lot of details, but
Okay.
the first step is to always have a stakeholder meeting to understand the profiles that you're going to be looking for.
Yes.
So when you meet the stakeholders, there's a certain set of questions that you need to ask. There's a certain understanding of the background that they're coming from that you should have, and some of these things are very intuitive. Like you should observe very well. As in, sometimes somebody might be coming in coming to you from a smaller market, a small or medium business, and their idea of branding and their idea of a website is going to be different from somebody who's, let's say, 20, 25 year old, has money at their disposal, and are going to build a fresh brand. These are all the things you need to factor in. Of course, talking to the person helps. They can even ask them to give you an example, perhaps. But at the same time, you should have the detachment to not get too influenced by their examples and create something new out of it, right? So whenever somebody comes to me and they're not really very well versed in design, I usually encourage them to share their idea of what they think their website should look like. And I also give them a disclaimer that, see, because I'm the person who's going to be building it for you, I'll infuse in my ideas. And if you have a problem with that, I would suggest that you pay somebody much less to pay me, because I'm going to build on your idea to help you. So that's how I go about it. And then, of course, there are things that you need to do post building as well. As I said, I'll send in a detailed document to you if I have one, or maybe an article if I find something that is going to answer your question. But this is the primary step: understand the user, understand what they want from you, and build on those ideas.
So I would like to add to this, right, on the top of that, which is Aditi role, right? It's very important to have a stakeholder meeting. So what's your opinion, Vibha photography? Like,
Sure.
sure, yes, sure. So yeah, so like as Aditi told, right, a stakeholder meeting is one of the important aspect of it, right? Because when you do a stakeholder meeting, then you can basically scope the project, and the scoping of any project is really important. There is hundred of processes, right? Hundred of processes. focused group study, contextual inquiry, one-on-one interview, card sorting, right? Information architecture designing, affinity mapping. There is n number of things, but all those processes are not required in any of the, like, all those processes are not required in all of the design assignments or design work, right? You have to figure out how much time do you have, right? What is the scope of the project, right? Like, some projects can be done without any kind of research, some projects can be done with the research part only, right? And obviously, at the end of the day, it matters the timeline, what's the deadline, and that will be given to you from your stakeholders. कि hey, I want to release this product by December end, right? अब December end तक क्या क्या कर पाओगे नहीं कर पाओगे, you have to figure out, right? So a scoping and stakeholder meeting is one of the first thing which you should do, and on the basis of that you should plan your basically UX process कि आपको क्या क्या करना है नहीं करना है, right? It's very important. As a designer, like, I feel that most of us don't scope the project. We just think and basically think कि, okay fine, इसमें ये process करेंगे, ये research करेंगे, but इस research को कहाँ use करेंगे, utilize कहाँ करेंगे, right? Synthesize data को हम कैसे utilize करेंगे design में is very tough task, right? At the end of the day, research अलग हो जाता है, design अलग हो जाता है, और बाद में हम दोनों को combine नहीं कर पाते. There is no marriage between this, right? So this is very important, that you should scope your projects, right? Do only those research part which you can synthesize the data and use in your design. That's it.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Aditi. And I didn't get your name. XT Talks.
Shlok.
Sorry?
Shlok, sir. Shlok.
Slow.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
And can we wrap this up now? Like, should we wrap this up?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No more questions. Okay. Cool. So okay. Swag. Yes. Thank you. Yes. So
Let's also share a link so that for future meeting.
Thanks everyone for joining in. I was really happy holding this session. I know, again, it's too complicated a topic to discuss with all of its details. I would have loved to come up with a proper software demo. Unfortunately, I cannot do that because I don't make those softwares. But next time, hopefully, I'll be able to come up with feature videos. And on the closing note, I would also like you guys to check out this if you're into video making and you're making video campaigns, which is the in thing right now. I would like you to check out this keyword that I'm typing in, spreadsheet to videos. It's all about collecting metadata from your existing videos and designs and then putting them in a spreadsheet. You don't have to do anything.
okay.
It collects the metadata and then it uses the different templates that it already has lived in, and it builds new videos for you at scale. So let's say that if you're doing a product video, I think this would be very useful if you guys are an e-commerce website. If you're doing large scale product videos for products, you might want to use this because even if you are an e-commerce site selling resorts, if you are building something for different which will require multiple videos, then you should check out this product. It might be useful for you. Called building videos from a spreadsheet. It's not the product's name, it's the keyword, but you'll find a lot of, because I have to maintain a kind of impartiality here. I cannot name or advertise a tool. I'm trying not to. Therefore, I'm just doing this, leaving you with this keyword. It will be very useful for you.
Building videos from spreadsheet using metadata.
It's interesting to say the least, and of course the technology is also, for those of you who are curious, is also going to be a very good feed to research. Alright, that's all from my side. Lovely meeting you guys all over again. Lovely to meet the new faces as well. Thank you, Shlo. Thank you, Parul, for organizing it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Alok, for being an active participant. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Ritik.
Aditi. Thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you, Ritik. Thank you for holding this session. It's really interactive and really cool, right? So again, like I was just going through meanwhile the presentation we were presenting. I was going through the date when we did the first meetup, and that was 2018, right? It was
Yes.
August 2018. Yes. So it's been now 2 years, right? We are doing this, meetup, and having you again on the panel. It's really cool, right? And we really enjoyed your presentation. We hope, in coming week or maybe coming month or year, we'll do once again few of the workshops with you, right? And
Very happy.
yeah.
I mean, it's always great to come back and do the session and connect with like-minded people.
Exactly.
Happy to be here.
Thank you everyone for joining this session, and we will record. We have a recording, and we will put it on our YouTube channel. Okay? And so we will do our live stream also.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye bye.